In this video, we're going to take a look at running Swift commands in the terminal interface. Let's go ahead and launch our terminal interface. Now, as we get started here, when we get to the point that we're actually executing Swift commands within our terminal interface, if we have not installed Xcode, this will not work. Prior to actually executing Swift commands, we should be able to do directory listings and take a look at where we are within the file system, etc. from a terminal window. It's just those Swift commands that we try to execute, or if we try to open up Xcode from the terminal window, that's not going to work until we have Xcode actually installed on the computer. Now, one of the things that we might want to be interested in is knowing where we are in the file system. Now realize that Mac is essentially based off of Linux as far as the operating system goes. So this terminal interface is using all of the Linux type commands. If we want to determine where we are in our computer, we can always take a look at our current directory by executing a pwd command. It's always going to give us where we are within our computer. And we can see that we are in the home directory. So this is my users/Jennifer Kunkel directory. I can go ahead and take a look at any of the directories that are on my file system in that particular home directory by doing an ls-l command. This is going to give me a long listing. I prefer that over just doing an ls, which gives me just the individual file names. I like to understand when things were last updated, etc. So I like the long listing, which is the -l command, versus just using the ls, which gives me just the actual directories instead. Now, this does not give me any hidden files. It's just showing me my directories and files within that particular home directory. If I have hidden files, they are not visible unless I provide another option to my command. Now, if I do something like an ls-a, it's going to give me more of my brief directory listing here that we have with the ls, but notice that we have dot files. Those dot files are hidden files. I can also do an ls-al. This is going to give me a long listing, and if my computer actually cooperates, I've been having a little bit of problem here with responsiveness lately. This is a Mac Mini, so it's not as powerful as some of the other Macs, so sometimes it's a little laggy. We can see that we have the hidden files here in addition to those directories that we previously have seen. Now, as I'm working through here, most everything that I have as far as folders is set up in my documents. And if I want to change in directory and go to my documents, I can do a cd and then specify my documents. This is going to take me into my documents directory. If I want to go ahead and do an ls-l, I don't necessarily care about my hidden files at this point. I can see I have a CIS-280 directory. I'm going to go ahead and change directory into the CIS-280. And if I was interested in what my entire file path was currently, I could do that pwd. It's going to give me my entire file path here. So this is going to show me that I am in my users, Jennifer Kunkel documents CIS-280 directory. Now, suppose I want to create some type of a junk file folder in here, because if I look currently, I have answer keys, Camtasia, GitHub, images, lectures, Scratch. Maybe I want to create a directory. Now, if I want to make a junk directory, I can do that using an mkdir. So this is make directory, and I can go ahead and specify junk. Now, if I decide that I want to go into my junk directory, and I would type it using a lowercase j instead of a capital J, notice I've created it with a capital J, it's not going to be able to do that. It went in there, went into something. I'm not sure what it was doing. It shouldn't have gone there, but if I go into my junk directory now we see that we are in the right one. So one of the things with Linux/Unix is that directories and files are case sensitive. So if my directory, smaller case junk, is not the same as my capital J junk directory. Now if I want to go ahead and I want to just execute some Swift commands at the command line and have it execute each one, every line that I type in individually, I can do that using the Swift command. So this is assuming that you have Xcode installed, and I can go into REPL. Now once I get into this particular mode, I'm going to be able to type a command, and then I'm going to see that it gets executed right away. So I type a command, it gets executed. Type a command, it gets executed. So I can go ahead here and assume that I want to create a constant. Well, with constants, we use the keyword let. Then I can specify my constant name. In this case, we'll call this message. I'm going to define this as a type string and set it equal to a value of this is a message. Now if I hit enter here, we can see that now it's created a constant message of type string that contains this is a message. I can go ahead and I can print out that message by putting my string within parentheses. If I don't put the message within the parentheses, it's going to error. So if I would do something like this, I'm going to get syntax errors. And then I would have to be able to read through this and figure out that somehow this means that it should have been placed within parentheses. Some of these messages are not necessarily the easiest to understand what they're saying. Now if I put it within the parentheses, everything is good. Now assume I'm just going through, I want to play around with some of the commands, I want to do some multiplication, division, etc., etc. I can go through this mode and actually do that. More often than not, however, like with your labs, you're going to actually have a file that you're going to want to edit. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this Swift space REPL mode, and I'm going to do that by typing in a colon and then a quit, and that's going to take me out. Now I have a lot of junk all on my screen, and notice that nothing that I've typed in has been saved. I do not have a program at all that I have created to rerun again and again and again. I've just kind of been doing it on the fly dynamically, and I have a lot of stuff on my screen and I want to clear it. So I can type in a clear command and it's going to clear my screen. Now if I want to go ahead and I want to create a file, I know that I'm in my junk directory. I can take a look. I currently don't have anything in here. I can use a touch command and type in the file name that I want to create. And maybe in this case I want to just create a test.swift file. It should have a Swift file extension. You can make it anything .swift and it should work. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. If I do an ls-l, I should see that now I have a test.swift file. Notice that it was created July 30th and it has a size of 0, so it doesn't contain anything. Now I have a couple different ways that I can edit this file, and we're going to take a look at both of them. The first way is I can use VI or Vim, and this is kind of the standard built-in default editor that typically comes with Linux/Unix, and it's a very powerful editor if you get to actually understand how it works. If you just try to use it and you don't quite understand the nuances and you haven't kind of got acclimated to how you can do things within VI, it is a bit cryptic. But I have seen some C programmers be so fast in coding with VI. I'm going to go ahead and get into VI on my test.swift file. And it's going to take me into my empty file. And in order to be able to insert anything into my file, I need to hit my escape key, and then I need to type an I. and this is going to take me into insert mode. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and I can type in some commands, just like I would normally do in any other text editor. So I can go ahead and I can say let message, make it a string type, equal to this is my message. I can go to the next line, print my message, and say I'm pretty much done with my file. I want to go ahead and save it at this point. And I can do that using a colon. So I need to hit the escape and then type the colon and then the W, and that's going to save it. But I'm still going to be in the file. If I want to save it and then quit, I would do an escape colon WQ. And that's going to take me out of the file. So now that I'm out of the file, I need to be out of the file in order to actually compile it. I can do a swift space test.swift, and this is going to go ahead and run my little code snippet that I had in there. Now, if I decide that I want to go through and I want to update the file, I could go back into VI if I wanted to, or I could go ahead and I could open Xcode. So if I just say open and then test.swift, it's going to launch Xcode for me. Now, one of the things about Xcode is that it's a little nicer. It's like normal text editors. And it has all of this nice little color coding. So I can go ahead, and if I decided that I wanted to type in a second constant, I could go ahead and type in, and you can see some of the code hints that are coming up. I can say something like another message, give it a type of string, equals hello world, because we all love hello world, and then I can go ahead and print out another message. Now I can use my standard file save options, or if I have my Command S that I want to use, I'm not that familiar with the Mac commands, especially since I'm using a Windows keyboard. It kind of gets me into trouble, so I'm just going to try to use the menus when I go through some of these walkthroughs. I have my terminal window already open. I've saved all my changes here. I can just go ahead and do my test.swift here, if I can spell Swift right, and I can see my two messages. So this is kind of a quick walkthrough of how we can update program code and run our programs using our terminal interface. Now, obviously, as we progress through the semester, we're going to get beyond some of the language syntax, and we're going to actually want to be using an emulator. And when we do that, we need to then use Xcode totally to actually do that with our emulator that's built into Xcode. But for our simple little lab programs that we're doing for the first week and into the next week or two after that, we're going to be using some command lines for those types of things. Now, as we go through things, we'll take a look at how we can use Xcode to clone and get repos from GitHub and how we can push things back, but that will be covered in another video. If you have any questions on anything that was covered in this video, hopefully some of the follow-on videos will answer some of that. If not, please let me know.